Live from New York, this is WIUR Radio.
How's it going, everyone? This is Eric of the Mincin Show, episode 7. A lot to talk about today. Today is obviously opening day for baseball. The Yankees play the San Francisco Giants tonight on Netflix in San Francisco. So that should be interesting to watch. Apparently, the first pitch I heard is going to be the hand from Adam's Family, a Netflix thing. I don't know. Kind of dumb. Anyway, a lot to talk about with the Yankees and the Mets today. We'll start off with the Yankees, being that they play later today, tonight at, I believe, 7 o'clock. So what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses for the New York Yankees? Their strengths are their rotation and their lineup. I think, personally, they have the best lineup in the American League with Judge and if Stanton stays healthy. I think that they have the best lineup in the American League. And that's saying a lot due to them being who they are, not very clutch. We saw it early on this season already in the WBC with Judge, not to harp on that disaster from him, but striking out in big spots in the finale in the championship game against Venezuela. He doesn't have the clutch gene, and that's fine. You have, that's why it's a 9-batter lineup, not a 1-batter lineup. Therefore, you don't necessarily need him to always come through in the clutch. However, he is your number one guy, and he's making the most money on the team, and he's the American League MVP, and he is the greatest baseball player that I've ever seen. So you hope that he comes through in those big spots for you, but we haven't seen it consistently at all. I mean, he has been missing. His bat misses every October, every big spot, and that's why these Yankees can't get over the hump. You've got to have Aaron Judge be consistently clutch day in and day out in the regular season, in the postseason, in the preseason. You've got to have him consistently being in the clutch. And that goes for Stanton. Now, Stanton has the clutch gene. When he's healthy in October, he carries the Yankees. We saw it in 2024, right there next to Soto. It was 2024 was Soto and Stanton in October that carried them to the World Series. And unfortunately, those two couldn't get it done for the entire October, for the entire postseason, obviously. You've got to have more. And that's why you have to have Judge be consistently clutch every at-bat. Whether there's bases loaded or bases empty, he's got to be in the clutch. And I can say the same for Soto. This year's a big year for Soto. Kind of not a prove-it year, obviously, but in a way it is kind of a prove-it year. Because you look at what he did last year with runners on base, he wasn't clutch at all, Soto. He hit 43 43 home runs, and like 35 were solo home runs. He needs to be way more clutch with runners on base, without a doubt. And if he's clutch with runners on base this year, the Mets are going to be a dangerous lineup. They have the chance of being the best in the National League, the New York Mets. But we'll talk about that a little later. Over to the Yankees, staying with the Yankees since they're playing tonight. We won't talk about the Giants. I don't really know much about the Giants. The Yankees are obviously the favorites in this game. So we'll just stick to what we know about the Yankees, and that being their lineup is the best in the National League, or their lineup is the best in the American League. Their rotation's the best in the American League. in my opinion. Now, you could say the Red Sox top of the rotation is the best with Crochet and Ranger Suarez, their new pickup this offseason. You could say the depth in the Seattle Mariners rotation puts them over the top, which could be a good take. It's a good argument. But when you have uh, Max Fried, couldn't think of his name for a second. You have Max Fried, you have Schlittler, you have then a healthy Garrett Cole, you have Clark Schmidt, you have a healthy Carlos Rodon. All those guys healthy is the best rotation in the American League. 1 through 5, that is a solid rotation when they're all healthy. Now, I know Rodon has had his ups and downs, whether he's pitching 7 scoreless or whether he's pitching three innings with 5 earned runs. He's had a lot of ups and downs, Rodon. But as a number 4 or a number 5, he's very good. He's a good number 4, number 5. You look over, just comparing, you look over to the Mets now, and their rotation, I'd say, is a top 5 rotation in the National League. Obviously, you're competing with the Braves, or though the Braves just lost Strider again. But you're competing now with the Phillies. You're competing with the Dodgers, obviously. You're competing with, 2 teams in your own division, the Braves and the Phillies, who have good rotations, good bullpens, and are going to be tough outs as well in those lineups. Obviously, the Braves didn't add a whole lot to their lineup this offseason. They will not be having Profar for this year. He was suspended 162 games. I mean, I think that's just terrible. I think he should be completely, totally banned from Major League Baseball. However, you look at these lineups, and I think the Mets is the best lineup in that National League East. I don't think they're the best in the National League just yet. I think if they added another bat, another big power bat in that lineup, I think that argument could be talked about and could be seriously debated. If they said, we'll bring back Alonso, we will keep, obviously, we have Soto. If you sign Bichette, you keep Alonso. You then trade for Robert in center. I think now that is the best lineup. But obviously, you moved on from Alonso, which is absolutely A-okay by me. You needed to. You needed to clean the culture, change the culture completely around. It wasn't working, and we've talked about that way, way, way earlier in the previous episodes. But those are the strengths with the Yankees. Their rotation's one of the best. Their lineup's one of the best. In the regular season, obviously. We talk about the playoffs. Obviously, then there are struggles. But just speaking of regular season, the Yankees are an automatic 90-plus win team every year. Every single year is a 90-plus win team. You can't say that for a lot of teams. Can't say that for the Mets. Definitely can't say that for the Mets. I don't know how the Yankees do it, but they do it every year, year in and year out. 90-plus wins. So that's the matchup for tonight, Yankees-Giants. Then they go on to Seattle. A tough start for the year for the Yankees, especially Yankee fans. You can't really watch the games. All the games are on at 10 o'clock. So it would be 7 o'clock Western time, Pacific time. But that's the matchup. So you want to talk about now Yankees' weaknesses. I think they have one weakness, and could be argued that it's their manager. It could definitely be argued that it's their manager, Aaron Boone. Now, I think Aaron Boone has what it takes to bring them over the top. But I would like to see, and obviously I'll be watching tonight. I would love to see where he goes after Fried. After Fried's out of the game after 5 innings, maybe 6 innings. I don't see him going into the 7th on opening day. First game of the year, I don't see that happening. I'd say 5 innings, 80 something pitches, 80, 90 pitches. But where Boone goes after Fried is way more important than all the moves before. Because that Yankee bullpen is not the greatest. You have Bednar, you have Camilo Doval, Fernando Cruz, and then you kind of lose it. You only have 3 arms in there that aren't very trustworthy. You don't have a ton of trustful guys in that bullpen. So I would say their manager's a weakness and their bullpen's a weakness going into the 2026 season. Now, going into the Mets, the podcast is about the Mets, so we'll talk about the Mets. Just wanted to touch on the Yankees, being that today's opening day for them, and tomorrow is opening day for the rest of baseball. The Mets are facing Paul Skeens tomorrow. I'm petrified of this matchup. However, if we get Skeens to do, 4 inning, or not 4 innings, but 5, 6 innings, and we stay in the game, Peralta keeps us in the game. I don't think the Pirates have a great lineup. I think they're okay. I think they'll be fine. They'll be tough, but Peralta's an ace. He's been here before. He's pitched on opening day at Citi Field before, where he shut down the Mets 2 years ago in 2024. I think this has got potential to be one of the best pitching matchups in a long time. Peralta ace, Skeens best pitcher in baseball. So I'm looking forward to watching that tomorrow I believe it's at 1:40. We got big news coming from the Mets, obviously, and this news came a lot later than I was hoping for. I think that this decision of Carson Benj being the right fielder for the New York Mets came way too late. And obviously, I think Mendoza wanted to make sure that this was the right decision, but I think it was the right decision going into the offseason. I think we knew right away that Carson Benj was going to be the right fielder of the New York Mets entering 2026. He wasn't on my radar entering the 2025 season. I think, obviously, a lot of people thought, well, he can get Tucker. You won't have to worry about Benj. You can let him grow in the minors when you sign Tucker. And I think that's what every Mets fan, even I think Stearns and Mendoza, was hoping for. And I know Cohen was. They were hoping, hey, we can sign Tucker short term, obviously 4 years. Maybe we have, at this point, then Tucker can be either DH or we can keep Tucker in right field. You can have Soto be the DH, and then you call up Benj after a year or two into Tucker's contract to play left field or right field. However, I think this decision's a great decision. I mean, there's no one else to play. There was a thought in the back of my head where it wasn't being announced yet officially, where Mendoza said he's going to be our right fielder. They kept asking Mendoza, and he kept saying, we'll find out, we'll see, we're still evaluating. And this was before the Tauchman injury. Now that Mike Tauchman's out, I think, for the year. I heard he tore his meniscus. I don't know how you come back from that as a aged player. I think his career's done. How do you come back from a torn meniscus? But I was getting kind of worried. I was thinking to myself, dude, we're going to go into this year. Tauchman was having a great spring, but Benj was having a better one. And I was thinking to myself, they're going to put Tauchman in right field, keep Benj in the minors for as long as possible, let Tauchman get the play. And I think that might have been the play. I think that's what they wanted. And then when Tauchman went down, with that injury on Saturday, this past Saturday, I think Mendoza said, okay, well, now he's left us no choice. We have to go with Benj to be our starting right fielder. But I think the idea and the goal and the plan was to have Talkman start the year in right field. Now, that would have been scary. I think that would have been very bad for this lineup. And I think it would have been a rough start to Mendoza's third year as Mets manager, a year where Mendoza's entering the year on the hot seat, so to speak. You know, if the Mets don't get off to a hot start here in 2026, I can see them moving on from him in June. I can see, one day waking up and saying Mendoza has been fired and that Correa is taking the spot, or whoever the bench coach is taking the spot. A young analytical guy is taking the spot over for Mendoza. But I'm glad that Benj is the right fielder. It had to happen. It had to happen. And the way that this bench is looking like, we just got the official wording, the official announcement from Mendoza earlier today that the official roster spots for the 2026 season. And it's looking like the bench is going to be Terrence, Taylor, Vientos, and Jared Young, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think Mauricio made the team. Let me double check real quick. I don't think he did, though. Yeah, Mauricio is not on the team to start the year. The infielders are Beatty, Bichette, Lindor, Polanco, Simeon, Vientos, and Jared Young. And the outfielders being Benj, Robert Jr., Soto, and Taylor. Now, another thing that I want to mention here is the rotation. It's not going to be a 6-man rotation, Mendoza announced a couple days ago. The rotation is going to be Peralta, Peterson, McLean, Holmes, and Senga. I personally would have done Peralta, McLean, Peterson, Holmes, Senga. But Senga had a great spring. His velocity's up. He finally stayed healthy. You know, the one thing that was good about this spring, and the one thing you always hope for, is a healthy spring. Everyone goes in healthy, everyone comes out healthy. And that's what we got. You know, we got a couple of scares. We got a scare with Lindor where he hurt his hand. He lost his hamate bone. But he's back and ready to go for tomorrow, which is great news. We thought maybe he'd miss a week into the season or a couple of days into the season. But he's back. He's been playing, and he had a not decent spring, but, he did as much as he could. But that's the one good thing that I noticed about this spring, is that almost every single player went in healthy, came out healthy. And that's all you can hope for and ask for in a spring training. The pitchers on this team now include Huasco Brazoban, which is a good pick, Luis Garcia, Clay Holmes, Richard Lovelady, which is very strange pick for Mendoza there, going with Richard Lovelady over Craig Kimbrell. I think Craig Kimbrell deserved it. I think he had a good spring, Kimbrell. Now, obviously, he will be staying with the squad. He will be staying with the team, Kimbrell, because obviously there's going to be an opportunity for you on this team. Richard Lovelady is not going to be pitching from March 26th to October 1st or whenever the season ends. That's not going to happen. You have Richard Lovelady. You have Sean Manaea, who made the team. I don't think that's a surprise. He didn't make the rotation, but he made the team. He's going to be in the bullpen, probably long reliever. You have Nolan McLean, obviously. Tobias Myers made the squad. Freddie Peralta, David Peterson, Brooks Raley, Kodai Senga, Luke Weaver, and Devin Williams. That's all solidified. That was all ready to go. I think the two main things that are question marks, or that were unknown, and it's really one, is Richard Lovelady. I don't think that was I don't think anyone saw Richard Lovelady making the 2026 opening day roster. But that's where we're at. Craig Kimbrell misses the opening day squad, but he'll have chances. Richard Lovelady, like I said, is not going to be pitching 80, 90 innings this year for the New York Mets. And in, April, early April, mid-April, when Richard Lovelady has a 5.5 ERA, Craig Kimbrell will get the call, and then he'll have a 5.5 ERA. So it's just especially with him, maybe Manaea as well. I personally don't see Manaea making it to the end of the year. I think the Mets will DFA Manaea at some point or trade him, but I don't think Manaea is on this squad come October. And now, obviously, we have 10 more minutes in the show, so I want to compare lineups from last year to this year, and the difference is incredible. It's an incredible difference. Now, batting leadoff was the same with Lindor at short. Batting second, Soto in right field in 2025. I'm listing off 2025 first. Alonso was at first, Vientos at third, Nimmo in left, Marte in DH, Taylor in center, Acuna in second, and Terrence in catching. Now, this lineup was horrendous. Now, when you look back at it and you look at where this lineup is now, I think this year's lineup is way better, way more clutch, way more experience, way more playoff experience than what last year's was. You'll have Lindor at short. Now, this is my projected lineup for tomorrow. I don't think this is going to be, this might not be exact. This isn't an official lineup, but I think this is projected based on Mendoza. And I looked at Mendoza's lineups throughout spring, and this is where, average-wise, where players landed on the lineup. And I think this is what he's going to go with ultimately. So Lindor at short, Soto in left. So that's already number one difference. Soto will be playing in left field. The second difference is that Bichette is now playing third, which is a big, big, big upgrade over Vientos playing third. You have now Polanco at DH, which I think is a bigger, not a insurmountable difference and an upgrade, not a giant upgrade at DH, but I think Polanco is a little bit better than Marte. Then you have Robert in center field, which is a big upgrade over Taylor offensively and defensively. I think Robert's going to be good defensively. Taylor's still on the squad, but thankfully not starting. Then the biggest upgrade of them all, I think, is Semien at second base. Adding Semien's bat, he didn't have the best spring, but adding his bat in that lineup, that veteran presence, is key for this Mets squad. And that's right next to Bichette. I think Bichette is the biggest upgrade this offseason for that lineup, but Semien's up there as well. Beatty at first, obviously, I think a downgrade defensively. We don't really know what Beatty's going to do defensively. We don't really know what Beatty's going to do offensively. Obviously, he had a great spring, but when doesn't Beatty have a great spring? Then you have Francisco Alvarez catching. That I think he was just hurt last year to start the year. And then you have Benjamin right field. I think that's a way better lineup than last year. Absolutely, I think it's a way better lineup than last year. And obviously the rotation I mentioned, Peralta, Peterson, McLean, Holmes, Senga. All five starters, pretty solid. Big question mark with Holmes. Will he extend his innings more? Will he, stay healthy? Will Senga stay healthy? Will Peterson lower his ERA? First half, Peterson is lights out. Second half, Peterson, he becomes, Mike Pelfrey. It's bad. So we'll see where this lineup and rotation takes us in 2026. In other news, two other things, and then we'll end it. We'll call it an episode. The second to last episode of the Mincin Show here on WIUR. Next week will be the final episode 8, where we'll probably just talk about the games that have happened so far. But two things to mention, two things I got to get off my chest. The Mets will be wearing a Davey patch, a Davey Johnson patch this year on their uniforms. Now, Davy Johnson, obviously a great coach. I think anybody would have won with that 86 team. That 86 team was a monster, more than a three-headed monster. That rotation was filthy. That lineup was gross. So Davy Johnson, obviously a good coach, obviously a Mets coach legend and a Mets legend and a baseball legend. He obviously passed away in September of 2025. And it was sad news, but I believe he was sick, so it was expected news, but it was sad news at the same time. However, can we cut it out with these patches? Every year since 2017, the Mets have worn a patch on their uniform. Every single year. I think it's just cheesy. I think it's corny. I don't really like it. 2 years ago, you had patches that I don't even know what they were. I don't remember who they were. And I remember the earliest one I remember was Rusty Staub. They wore a Rusty Staub patch in 2018. I think it was 2018 where they really started with these patches. Rusty Staub passed away on opening day in 2018. They wore a Rusty Staub patch for the rest of the year. In 2019, they probably had another patch I'm not familiar with. 2020, they probably had a patch. 2021, they had the Seaver patch, I believe, since Seaver passed away in 2021. They've had all these patches. I'm getting tired of it. And it's a cool looking patch. It just got his name on it. It's nothing crazy. It's not a giant patch. They're cool, I guess. But the way that they announced it, it's like this year the Mets will be wearing a Davy patch in honor of Davy Johnson. And it's like, okay, well, what's next year's patch? Will there be a year where the Mets aren't wearing a patch outside of Mr. Met or the Mets logo or the New York Presbyterian patch, which is also just ridiculous? I hate those patches so much. But that's capitalist America, I guess. I don't know. And then to end it off with the Hall of Fame induction of Carlos Beltran this summer. Number 15 will be expected to be retired this year at Citi Field for Carlos Beltran. And this is another thing that I'm starting to really dislike about what's going on with the Mets. I think that we're taking it way too seriously, and we're becoming the Yankees to an effect, in a sense, where every number is being retired now. And obviously, Beltran deserves it. He's a Hall of Fame player going in as a Met. I think Beltran deserves his number retired. I think Seaver deserves his number retired. I think Piazza deserves his number retired. Those three guys went in the Hall of Fame as New York Mets. End all be all, that's it. Those three guys. Beltran, Piazza, Seaver. I think David Wright deserved his number retired. I know he's not going to be a Hall of Fame Met. He's in the Mets Hall of Fame, but I don't think he's going to be going into the Hall of Fame as a Met. I don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer at that. But he was a fan favorite for 20 years. You have to retire David Wright's number. Keith Hernandez's number being retired. I love Keith. Obviously, I never saw him play, but he's one of my favorites. Greatest first baseman of all time. I don't think he deserved his number retired. I don't think Doc Gooden deserved his number being retired. I don't think Darryl Strawberry deserved his number being retired. I don't think Willie Mays deserved his number being retired. I don't think Jerry Koosman deserved his number being retired. I mean, there's a whole list of guys. More than half of that number retirement up in those rafters don't really deserve to be retired or shouldn't be retired. Not that they don't deserve it, but they shouldn't be retired. Willie Mays, one of the greatest baseball players ever. Everyone thinks of him as a giant. Why are we retiring his number? Keith was here for 4 years. Doc, Straw, they were here for 6. Yeah, they delivered a championship, but that's it. They're not entering the Hall of Fame as Mets. They're in the Mets Hall of Fame. They're not in Cooperstown. But I think we'll end it at that. I think that's a good place to end it. Let's see if the Giants can beat the Yankees. I hope so. But obviously, the Yankees are the favorites tonight and for the rest of the series against the Giants. Let's go Mets. Obviously, tomorrow being opening day for the rest of baseball, tonight being just Yankees Giants. But until then, I'll see you guys next week, next Wednesday, for episode 8 of The Mincin Show. And I'll see you guys then. Have a good one, guys.